Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Baumanis. I am let's just say I'm the director of so many things, right? But one of them, of course, is professionals, which you guys are in this cohort right now. It's the first official cohort where professionals is actually a standalone silo. So as you guys know, X Culture comprises of multiple departments. And one of them, of course, is virtual, which is the university track that's run by Dr. Vas Taras out of the University of North Carolina. And then we have the Academy, which is also one of the programs that I manage. And that is me and another one of our program directors, Rafael out of Brazil, run that program. And then, of course, we have now professionals, which is run by these three amazing women, one of which is Annette, but Madalena Dulio and Sayaka from Singapore. And it is my pleasure to host today one of my very best friends, Mr. Chris Mangos, who is the director of marketing for Miami International Airport and has been the director of marketing for 30 plus years, right, Chris?
Wow. A total of just under 35 years.
35 years.
In several capacities.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I just a little bit of a personal story about my friendship with Chris. We have been collaborating now. I think we were talking about this the other day when we were having dinner. It's got to be 15 plus years. What we would do with my university, we would take students down to Miami International Airport, and Chris would put us in these high security buses and take us around Miami International Airport on the back lot, where we would, drive along the huge airplanes and go through the cargo section and really get to understand what it means to have Miami as the gateway to the Americas. Miami International Airport runs like a city. It's bigger than many cities in the world. And a lot of it comes out of his department. Some of the alliances that he's made with some of the airlines. I believe it was Chris who helped negotiate the A380, the Lufthansa, the flying whale, right? We call it the flying whale, which I've taken over from Miami to Frankfurt, Germany a few times. This plane is so big, it has 3 gates. So pretty amazing stuff. And he tells us stories about how he's negotiated, with CEOs of airlines to come to Miami. So you guys are in great hands. I can't say enough about my friend, Chris Mangos, and I hope that you guys learn a lot from him today. So this is his formal introduction from Annette.
Thank you, Dr. B. So, I will also take this opportunity to thank you, Chris, because you said yes on first attempt. So it's we really feel humbled that you hold us in such high regard that every time X Culture comes calling, you don't even give it a second thought. So we thank you very much for that, and we will let you take the show from now.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Dr. B. Appreciate it. Yes, I fully believe in the mission of X Culture. Dr. B has fully immersed in it. So it's a question of when you do come knocking, there is no second thoughts as to availing myself and being able to bring my experiences to the forefront in this venue and this audience. Let me begin with a little bit about my background. And I know Annette asked me today to focus more on speaking skills, presentation skills, where I got them from. We know we're not born with them, and we can take it from there. My background is clearly airports. My life has been 2 airports. I started as a student intern when I was living in Boston at the airport there, and wound up getting a job offer from them, stayed with them 9 years. It was a lot of what was titled public service / public relations work. And of course, a lot of one-on-one on that. I didn't have that much immersion before a group of people or a crowd of people to really focus on, do I speak well? Do I deliver well? It was a matter of calming not so pleasant situations and making people happy. It was a make a people happy job. Eventually, I moved on. There was an opportunity for me in a job that was posted at Miami International Airport. It was in media relations, and I was a good writer. I was interviewed on speaking skills as well. Amazingly, I passed that and was hired. And I think one of the first things that I got hit with, and I would take that trauma and pass it all on to you, because from there, anything else is literally a piece of cake. When a TV crew shows up many times unexpectedly, turns the camera on in your face, and suddenly the whole world is watching. There is no time to pre-consider the questions that are thrown at you. You don't know how it's going to be spun, as they say, when it ultimately makes on TV. So very early in the game, I had to think about what the situation was. There was the other side of the job was writing, and I can write forever. If you think I can speak a lot, wait till you see me how I write. I just continue to write forever. But this thing of media relations initially was brought a lot of anxiety in my life, and I said that I needed to cultivate what it took to actually be able to get up before. This isn't a crowd. This is a reporter and a single camera. But nonetheless, it brought anxiety. So I had to think about the evolution of myself in terms of the comfort of being able to do this. I had a very good boss who pretended to have a camera and put me in precarious situations to see how it would react. Eventually, I did adjust. Self-assurance eventually kicks in, and I'll tell you why, and as we get into other facets of what is public speaking and making presentations, and ultimately gaining credibility not only in myself, but how I project to the audience that would be watching me on TV that night. Interestingly enough, it became second nature after a while, as you might imagine. Eventually, I moved on within Miami Airport. There was a newly founded marketing division. It thrilled me to hear of the kinds of things that we would be going after in terms of promotion, promoting passenger development, cargo development, new route and new airline development, all of those things. And of course, all of that entails, obviously, the science of presentations and numbers and statistics and all that. But you have to deliver that. You have to deliver that. So therein came the opportunity to not only be addressing groups of people, airline CEOs, airline representatives who are called network planners. They are the ones who prepare the routes and bring the routes to the CEO and the boards of the airlines and say, hey, we need to fly to Miami for the following reasons. So that's where we are. In turn, what's happened, and obviously the years have gone by, and I have made, I can't tell you how many presentations and how many speeches before industry groups, business groups. It's second nature to me now. I have no problem with it. And of course, yes, 35 years have passed. So it is a simple thing. But I thought today that since Annette asked me to share my experiences, my skill set that I think that I have developed, and how I do it and why I do it, and share that with all of you, and gain credibility with this audience as well. So public speaking, let me start with that. At work, most of you or all of you or some of you are actually out there employed. I don't know how many of you are just strictly students. If you are, stay in it forever. There's nothing like being a perpetual student. It's a great thing to be. But if you're out there working like me, I think we have to define what are those opportunities in the workplace, or what are those situations that we're put in many times as speakers in the workplace, and coming to understand them. Is it a staff meeting? Is it a board meeting? Is it an outside audience? Is it a group of investors your company's called in and you need to get up there and sell them an idea or a concept or an item, whatever it is? What are the things that clearly transcends all those stations, all those situations of all is professionalism? If you don't convey your sense of professionalism, bring them to understand that they are dealing with a professional, then it's very hard to get the credibility that you're seeking to get from them as well. Regardless of their levels of professionalism, you're the consummate professional before your audience. Very important. Content, and I call these 3 C's that I employ: content, clarity, and conciseness. being concise, to the point, clarity. Don't use jargon. Don't use, scientific words that are, 25 letters in length that people may not understand. Don't make them uncomfortable. Be clear, be concise, and make sure that the content is what they want to hear. They don't want to hear the weather report today or how sunny Miami is or how big my airport is. This is something that is targeted. And again, the three C's: content, clarity, and conciseness. And of course, important is, and I think this is utmost importance, all of this is balanced with your personality. Don't be a robot. Don't be a robot. We have emotion. I have taken a few in undergraduate and graduate level communications classes, and that transcends in that get up, walk around, use your hands like I'm using here. We all have our personality. We need to bring that in there as well. I'm not saying a stand-up comedy routine. While I also believe that there is always room for a little bit of humor every now and then, and I'll tell you when and why. But personality is very important. You become attached to the company you work for, the corporation you work for, to be able to say, hey, Chris with the funny jokes at Miami Airport, he's the one, we remember when he delivered the following presentation, or he's the good contact because he knows his stuff and he's approachable. We can reach out and touch him and speak to him and get an audience with him. Those are the kinds of things that, in the workplace. Conferences, industry, and business meetings. How do those happen? Well, for me, many times the airport is a sponsor or belongs on a board or an association. They have conferences, conventions, industry gatherings, and this and that. They come looking for speakers, or many times you'll volunteer yourself. You hear that there is going to be a 2-day conference on the following matter. It's a good thing to step up to the plate, if you will, and offer yourself as a speaker in this particular gathering. It's a good public relations move, brings your company to light. It also offers you many times an opportunity to inform or to sell your product. Do I have a product to sell as an airport? Yes, I most definitely do. And who am I selling it to? Am I selling it to that person that is on that airplane that's in my background? No, I'm selling it to those who are our business partners, to our airlines, to the airline community, to the industry outside of the airport as well, to let them know what is happening at my airport, what the statistics are, what opportunities might lie there. So yes, step up to the plate. It brings yourself and your company and your product or services to the forefront in speaking. Much of what I said before about meetings can be transferred over into conferences itself in terms of content and clarity and conciseness. There are usually time limits. Respect your time limit. If you are told you may speak for 15 or 20 minutes, don't prepare yourself to speak for 40. Allow yourself the opportunity that people may have questions. So keeping that time limit and knowing that time limit, which I've broken the first rule because I never asked Annette, how long do you want me to speak today? But it doesn't matter. At some point in time, Annette's going to give me one of these and we'll know it's over. But I think, particularly with a conference or a gathering of people in an audience, get in there, get the job done, and obey the time limit itself, and allow people to the opportunity to ask questions themselves.
Can I just reiterate that? As a college professor, one of the things that we teach our students to do is presentations and getting in front of an audience, right? Of course, you already said, like, read your audience and kind of understand the perception that they have, what basics they know, so that, you can catch them up, or maybe you're going over stuff that's not relevant anymore. But I think one of the weakest links to doing a good presentation is not being yourself, not being able to read your audience, and then getting lost in your own presentation. And I think what you're giving them is all of the working up to how do you actually get in front of an audience, and how do you actually prepare to give a very clear, authentic presentation. So all of the things that Chris is saying, you guys, that's exactly how professors want you to prepare. And a lot of times people don't think about that. What they do is they think about the content, but they don't think about all of the other pieces that impact the content. And then that's when they start, getting flustered and lost in the presentation. So I just wanted to mention that.
Well, I guess I can skip over item C, which says gauging audience reaction, their interest. That is something that, and it is important that you don't get lost in your presentation. Look around the room. First of all, in good public speaking, you're not focused on the good-looking guy or the great-looking lady that's in the front row. You're focused on the audience as a whole. Move your head around as you're speaking. Look out at your audience as well. If there's an entire section on the left that has now dropped their head and asleep, something's wrong here. So keeping their interest is your job as you're delivering. It very much is your responsibility to keep their interest. Speak up. And one of the things that when I'm in an audience and a speaker comes up, especially if the speaker is interesting or has content that I'm very much interested in, yet they're whispering. They're not aware that the microphone is over here on the right instead of right here in front of them. You can't hear them. And I'm usually the wise guy in the audience that's going like this with my finger to my ear. Hopefully they'll see me and realize that we can't hear them. We can't hear them. Speak up. No one ever said, wow, were they loud? What they do say is, wow, Annette was great in her delivery. Too bad we couldn't hear her. So those are the kinds of things that that you need to be wary of. It's a multifunctional, multi-sensory situation to be up before a group of people and delivering. So it's and I'm not trying to complicate it. It's a matter of, yes, we can do multiple things. We are super people that are able to balance all of these things when we get in front of a crowd. Interestingly enough, I was once on a business mission in Spain, and we were in Madrid, and then later on went to Barcelona. And I didn't know that in Barcelona, when my presentation, the group's presentation, and each one of us had to get up, we were in this majestic theater that could probably sit 800-900 people. It was like a theater like Carnegie Hall in New York, a majestic theater and this and that. And the spotlights were on you, so you couldn't see the audience. And you're on this gigantic stage, and I just felt like whipping out a guitar and starting to sing, because it's like, here, I finally made my debut before, this grand. And it was a whole different experience after years and years and years of speaking to people in different venues and in different hotel ballrooms or conference rooms, what have you, to be in this thing where normally performers are on stage. And in essence, we're performing, aren't we? So, I didn't botch it up. I did a good job. The presentation was entirely in Spanish. So I just said something that, this is my first time, performing, because this theater is, and they all laughed, and I forget what I said, but, I broke my own fears that moment, by just making some humor there. And it was well taken. Also, don't try a second joke if on the first one nobody reacts. And it really depends on your audience, and it has nothing to do with sense of humor. Who are you addressing? And we'll get into the cultural thing a little bit later. Finally, one of the things that you need to, and I work for Miami Airport, which is owned by local county government. So in essence, I am a government employee. There is a book written on government employee behavior, do's and don'ts, how I can incriminate myself, and no, I won't go to jail, but yes, I will be looking for a new job. So within that comes the separation of fact versus opinion. Where are you speaking? What is the expectation of you? And I call this the I think versus I know. Okay. Remember this. We once had an older British gentleman that worked for our, and he was in statistics and analyses and this and that. And whenever he would speak before a group, or even when the media wanted to speak to him, he used, having been educated, highly educated in the United Kingdom, used the term we think, we believe. It was the royal we. And it got him in trouble time and time again because we are not thinking, we are not believing. We are there as instruments of the Miami-Dade County Aviation Department / government employees. And when we're asked to speak, we're delivering facts, fingers, true uh, to the extent that we know that they are true. We don't think. I'm not saying that we're walking puppets here, or that just open our mouths and words come out. If I am asked for my opinion, I quickly say professional or personal, and then I'll go from there. But always remember that too, and don't mix your content. If they want you to do, if you're nuclear physicists and it's strictly a scientific presentation, then keep it that way. Don't get into your perspectives and your personal beliefs on the subject matter as well. Presentations, what I mean by that is you're presenting to one person, your boss, or presenting to a group of colleagues, or presenting to in my particular case, I go to the headquarters of airlines, be it in the United States or on the other side of the world. And I sit down with those people and make a case for their airline to either come to Miami with inaugural flights or to expand their service levels. The Air India is behind me because it's a target airline. And I put that in there for people to realize that, we are going after Air India, and we're hoping one fine day that we're going to get a nonstop flight from India to Miami. So, there's always a method to my madness. And, once I have that airplane will change to another one.
Are you really going after Air India right now?
Absolutely. We have a meeting with them next month. Yes.
Oh, yeah. And how's that going?
It's smooth. Well, the fact that any airline will give you an audience is a good thing, because many say no. We're not ready to talk to you, or we're not ready to make an expansions to another market. So the mere fact that they want to listen to what we want to present,
yeah. Can you give us an example of what it's like to negotiate with a large airline to go from wherever they are to Miami and actually get the deal done?
Yep. One of them, and I'll give you an international one, and I'll give you one that incorporates all these other nuances of doing business in the international arena. We have worked very, very hard. I've been spearheading an effort for many years now, probably over 12 years, to get us a Tokyo nonstop. And we ultimately worked it down to Japan Airlines. There's another Japanese airline, but they, for many business reasons, do not want to come to Florida. Japan Airlines showed interest, but what happens with these particular situations, we're talking what we term in my language an ultra long haul route. This isn't 8 or 9 hours, this is 16 hours. This is putting a $300 million airplane that you may or may not have at the moment in a business proposition. This is a little bit different. They're committing a major resource in order to complete what you're asking them to do. It took a long time, and it took many presentations, both in Tokyo, in the New York office of Japan Airlines, bringing Japan Airlines interests to Miami to sit down and talk. We even put what was called a Japan task force together, where we gathered the entire business community, representation from the business community in South Florida, to come into a hotel ballroom, sit down with Japan Airlines and say, we want you here. This is what we're going to do if you come. And we're not talking about financial support. We're talking about there are people who want to go to Tokyo, South Florida, to Tokyo nonstop without having to go somewhere else in the United States first. So it takes a lot of different kinds of presentations. The basic one is what is called the route study, and where we sit down with the network planners, perhaps hire people in the organization, and the presentation entails on the numbers. Does this new flight make sense? Not only from who's on that airplane, how many will be on that airplane, analyses done on an annual basis, how much money is to be made, how much money are you going to make by taking that lower part of that airplane, which is called the belly, and also carrying cargo in there. What are those items that you will be carrying? And ultimately, the recommendation of, based on the numbers and this and that, we see you entering the market with, let's say, 4 flights a week. And then we get into other things like, this is what the airport will do in terms of incentives, monetary incentives in the first year and in the second year, to get you to come here. So it took a long time. It takes a lot of meetings. You cannot lose your patience, particularly with, you're not dealing with an airline that is in New Jersey. You know, what's good business practice in Miami is good business practice in New Jersey. This is Japan. This is another country. This is another culture. Business is conducted in a different way. Right. Understanding what those business nuances are. From the very beginning of walking into their offices, of thanking them for this privilege, which is a business meeting, on grabbing the business card and presenting it to them. You don't throw it across the table. Or you don't walk away after giving the business card and just go to the table itself. It's ceremonial for them to read your business card, look at you in the face, and acknowledge that this name is now this person in front of me, and wait to be seated. All those things, all those intricacies and nuances have to be considered and have to be practiced before you can even sit down and open the books, if you will, on the business case.
So the other thing about Japan, you deal, depending on where you are in the transaction, right? You deal ultimately with the highest level of the company, which means that they also expect your side to bring the highest level to come and do that negotiation. So until you know that the highest level decision maker is really on the table, you're really not quite there yet in making the deal, right? Well, I wanted to ask you with the Japanese, one of the things that I teach my students when we're doing cultural dimensions, did you have to go to dinner with all of them and get to know them and, go out drinking with them? Because those are some of the things that we tell them, right? Like you might have to be invited to some social events because they want to know who you are outside of the boardroom before they start negotiating with you. So what did you have to do?
Basically, all of that occurred in New York and in Miami, not in Tokyo. Okay. The Tokyo visits were very business oriented. They also had various interests there from different parts of the company, if you will, accountants and analysts and all this and that. So I remember with the other Japanese airline, ANA, I probably had 25, 30 people around this mega board table in a boardroom. Talk about intimidation, because your every word is being calculated. I'll switch over to Hong Kong for a minute. My first meeting with Cathay Pacific, the Hong Kong airline, involved a bunch of analysts who walked in with these gigantic calculators, the old-fashioned kind where you push buttons and they make noise. And they plugged them in, and while I'm trying to deliver, they had opened up into my financials page of my presentation and were rechecking my numbers. So, you're trying to talk to the vice president and you're hearing tick, 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 as they're calculating the numbers.
Yeah. Let's back up with that though, because when you were saying that, again, there's some requirements, right, that I think our students still probably haven't thought about, which is the cost of goods sold. There is a minimum number that an airline has to hit in order for that break-even point to happen. And that includes both what is being transported as cargo and also the number of people that fly as passengers for a certain amount, right? And once they meet that, anything above that is profit. It's called the COGS, cost of goods sold. That break-even point is what everybody's looking at. And then at what price will it cost for them to fly that 16-hour nonstop? And then what above that what is going to be considered profit? right? And they have to have a long-term trajectory, like how many years can we do that? And do we anticipate there to be a growth in a market or a decline in a market? So those are the things that those calculators are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. In airline language, it's called the margin, and the margin is that break-even factor. And they know that this is the margin level, and all airlines are not the same. Every single airline, even within a country, the two Japanese airlines might have to perform at very different margins. We cannot consider a route that's going to have a 3% margin. And remember, airlines are the absolute worst business you can get into because the operating margins are so high. The costs are so very high. So when you hear that a mighty airline like Japan Airlines operates on a 5% margin, that means they only make 5% of all the revenue that they bring in during the course of the year from their entire, global network. And that's a good number. If we, and with a company that does a lot of these analyses for us, we look at it, and if it comes in under 5, we start looking at our numbers again and are going, wow, this is pretty precarious. We don't know if we're going to get beyond 5 minutes with this airline before they ask us to leave. If you're coming in there with, but the realities are based on their business model, based on the market, based on what our analyses show as to what that margin might be by coming to Miami. For us in Miami, one of the things that we realize is we're a great place for a lot of different reasons as the gateway to the Americas, as we are now Miami Airport because of what happened in COVID. Sad, but good for us. Because of COVID, Miami has escalated to #1 international passenger airport in the United States. We bumped Los Angeles and New York JFK. We may not stay there, but that's where we are today. And in international cargo, we're also #1 in the United States as well. Good selling points. We definitely throw that at you when we sit down and try to do business.
Why did you guys, or how did you guys exceed LA and LAX and New York? How did that happen?
Based on those are the 3 traditional gateways to the United States, and they have we all have what are called bread and butter route networks. Okay, that everything else is good, but what are our bread and butter? Where does our money really come from? Well, for us, it's Latin America and the Caribbean. For JFK, it's Europe, and for LAX, it's Asia. Okay, and stop and think about that. For us, the Latin American traffic, except for a couple of markets that really crashed, we did really well during those times. We did really well. Los Angeles was decimated because of its dependence on the Asian market. And Europe, of course, for JFK. Now, we all have routes that extend into those other areas as well, but there is one particular route network that is the best and most profitable for us. And that's why we ascended. So, my counterpart at JFK, when the rankings came out by a third party, an association, my counterpart at JFK wrote and said, "Congratulations, enjoy it. You're not going to have it for long." So, and it's just friendly competition, and we realize that JFK is New York City, and nothing can possibly top that as well. The point that I was about to make, though, was, as good as we are and as mighty as we are, the reality sets in that we are also, and this is something you need to consider because you're going to get hit with this. And that is, what is the weakest link in your company, in your corporation, in your business? And for us, it is geography. It's a blessing for us, for Latin America and the Caribbean. We became the pivot point for the Americas. But when we start looking at ultra long haul routes, particularly in Asia, we're the furthest point away in the continental United States. Distance becomes our enemy. And for many years, airplanes couldn't handle it. It required a stop, a technical stop, or a fuel stop. Now we have the airplanes that can do this nonstop. But still, distance is cost. For every hour that airplane is flying, it's burning fuel, operational costs, and turnaround costs, and airport costs, all those things that are considered by an airline itself. This past Tuesday, without us even knowing about it because they had done their own research, the Australian airline, Qantas, announced that it is getting a new airplane, the A350 ULR, ultra long range, which can fly in excess of 21 hours. And one of the routes that has been designated in 2025 will be a Sydney, Australia, Miami nonstop. That flight will operate for 18
Woohoo!
Oh, hang on,
Yeah.
hang on. Don't go getting your passport ready. That flight will operate for 18 hours and 55 minutes nonstop to Miami. And what remains to be seen is, is this the CEO just being, I'm going to conquer the world with all these new airplanes and this and that, or have they really done, operational costs to see what is it going to cost them to operate almost 19 hours to Miami? How much can they charge for the flight? What is the market and how much will they, here's another word, stimulation. When a new route develops, it stimulates new traffic. I just said nonstop to Australia, and Dr. B is packing her bag already. That's stimulation. So those are the kinds of things that we look at as well, and we try to. Nothing would be better than to see a nonstop to Australia. But I'm hoping to get a regional meeting with them in the next 2 months to sit down and say, is this true? Have numbers been looked at? Can we help in the analysis? So those are the kinds of things that I think we've talked about international audiences. One final thing, I said what is customary: greetings and salutations, business cards, presentations, simultaneous translation. Now all of a sudden, either a foreign visiting group has come to your company, or you've gone to theirs and you're on the side of the planet. You don't speak their language, they don't speak yours. And now, whether you're giving a speech or you're giving a PowerPoint presentation or just sitting there talking about a business proposal, they have an interpreter in the room. What does that do? Well, number one, it does nothing to you. The only thing that you need to consider at that point in time is the 10 minutes you've been given is probably going to become 20 minutes, if permissible. And two, slow down, give it time, and break up your presentation. If your opening remarks are a giant paragraph, don't do it. Anticipate what's going to happen, and that is take it a sentence at a time and let them translate the sentence. Usually looking up at the translator or the interpreter gives them the clue that I'm going to be quiet for a moment so you can convey it. I had to go through our traffic forecast studies for a new route are typically 50 to 55 pages long, and with spreadsheets included and everything. And in both cases in Korea, with both Korean airlines, it was strictly interpreters. So, what I calculated or miscalculated was my 1 hour presentation is going to turn into 2 hours unless you facilitate it and say, I'm going to help you through this. And page 17 speaks for itself. We don't have to cover it, or, try to accommodate them as well. It's very frustrating for everybody in the room. I was with the vice president of Korean Airlines, and who didn't speak a word. And, I realized that they're frustrated as well, because you're walking in with, presentation that is, a lot of English words, but a lot of algebra in there too, with all the calculations and everything else you've done. So accommodating, anticipating, doing those things and recognizing and doing as much homework as possible before you actually get the audience is just a great thing to do, and it certainly facilitates it, shows consideration, and again, professionalism. This guy that walked in from Miami, Florida, has done this before. He understands what the vibes are here and what we need to do.
So, and I just want to kind of like reiterate that around the world, Americans have this persona that we're kind of like gunslinging cowboys. We're very uncouth and we're very unprofessional. And really, it's our responsibility as people of high level that, somebody like Chris Mangos goes and and really represents the country. And I've seen it myself when I've taken students abroad, how some of my students misbehave only because they do not know. And I think it's our responsibility, especially here at X Culture, to really teach our students how to represent themselves, their families, their countries in a way that we can all be proud of. And you know what's really interesting? We have students here from, Emily is in Munich, Germany. Mike is from Brazil. I'm sorry, Adikani is from Somalia. Stefan is from Sofia, Bulgaria. Louise is in the Netherlands. Annette, of course, you know, is in Nairobi, Kenya. Lisa in Montreal. I mean, everybody here is from somewhere else. Charlene is in Suriname. There is not one American. What does that tell you? Right? That, you know, our students from all over the world are so excited to learn about, you know, the airport, how we represent ourselves as professionals in the United States, and really trying to learn, you know, how to do business internationally with Americans. So Mike has a question, and his question is, how is the negotiations in the VIP rooms at the airport? So I've been at Miami International Airport, and I don't remember seeing any VIP rooms there.
Well, the airport having its own conference rooms, is that
yes.
what you're asking, Mike?
Yeah.
And we do. Okay. My offices are actually not even in the airport terminal. No. They're in an office building that we have on the north side of the airport. And we have a very large conference room and a very small conference room for those purposes. When we have large groups, our airport terminal has a hotel above it. And at the top of the hotel is a conference center where we can meet with as little as 15 people, or open up the walls in the conference room and have a meeting for 200. Okay. Those are our limitations. Yes, yeah. And they're not just business meetings. We also have celebrations, anniversaries, ribbon cuttings when the new airport comes, when a new airline comes to our facility. So yeah, we have some parties in the terminal. We do.
Okay. Yeah, we have. So and Emily, I believe Emily is from Germany. She wants to know, does Miami Airport have big struggles with the high cost of energy today, and also with inflation rate?
Yes, and yes. Yes, we're all dealing with that, Emily. And it's interesting, but it's now been probably a course of 4 years, maybe 4 years, that we have started all kinds of measures to save energy, and looking at environmental issues as well. There's a whole solar park. There's a lake on the south side of the airport. And with our electric company, FPL, Florida Power and Light, we have installed there a floating solar city, if you will, which is helping us. Every single faucet, toilet, any device that emits water in the airport has been changed to conserve. Lighting has changed from the garage to our terminals to save electricity. So there are all kinds of things there, and they're not only driven by cost, but they're also driven by it's important that the airport set the example, as well as our seaport, that is our sister agency, the Port of Miami, to set the example of sustainability, environmental concern. Those are the kinds of things that we're doing. We're an older airport. We have 2 new sections and 1 old section, which is going to be done. We're not, we're not modern and brand new like Munich Airport is. By the way, I love Munich. Been there many, many times. But we're working it, and as we continue to upgrade, renovate, and rebuild the airport, all those new, energy savers and sustainable practices are being employed as we do all of that.
Emily also wants to know, what does your normal day look like? And Emily, I'm just telling you, Mr. Mangos and I oftentimes try to talk during the day, and it is kind of like shooting darts in the dark because he's so busy. But anyway, she wants to know, how is your life like?
The normal has changed as of COVID. I did have a normal, and now and even those days I thought that was abnormal. and it couldn't get more abnormal than it did during COVID. Most of us who could function from home were sent home. We still have not been given the order, believe it or not, because we are government employees under county. The county, Miami-Dade County, provides all kinds of essential services to Miami-Dade County. There are 28,000 county employees, and it was deemed that we would not be given a date to return, but we would return as our individual areas, be it water and sewer, be it the seaport, be it public schools, be it the airport. The CEO of those particular organizations or departments would see as to bringing people back. I've been given the authority to, with my particular group, to do as I please. So we have mandatory Tuesdays and Thursdays right now. We're trying to bring back the normality of how we used to function. And if we're able to, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we work from home. We have the technology to do it, but we are a small group with a very large task. So I see that as we are moving forward and things are pretty much back to normal, if you will, with COVID. Yes, it's still out there. Yes, people are still getting sick. But I see us that by the beginning of the year that we will slowly be building it back up. That's the long answer. The short answer is I start every morning with what I think is my agenda, what I think I'm going to accomplish in the day. What happens after that is out of my control. Clearly out of my control. And an assignment of mine or a project of mine that I think is going to take 2 or 3 days sometimes takes a week, sometimes takes a week and a half, simply because situations arise. I have a staff, they depend on me. I have bosses who call on me. Situations, that, drop everything. I went to a workshop yesterday, and this is the final thing I'm going to be talking about, the topic is called Being Ready. I went to a workshop in downtown Miami where the economic development and economic engines of Miami were gathered to discuss brainstorming for next year. This is the Economic Development Agency called the Beacon Council. This is the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. This is the airport, the seaport, other interests as well. 25, 30 of us. And what I thought was going to be a 1-hour meeting turned out to be a 3-hour meeting, leaving downtown Miami on a Friday afternoon, probably in any big city, is a complicated issue with traffic. So your day is shot, basically. Your day is shot. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, and this happened to me yesterday, is the final item I wanted to discuss. It's called Be Ready. Not everything is on your calendar. Not everything is scheduled in advance. Be ready. Whether it's your boss, whether it's your staff, whether you are called upon to go somewhere and speak or present, be ready. And how are you ready when you're not ready? Well, there are the basics that I think you're obligated to keep up here, to know. Know your job, know yourself, know those vital statistics and information that in a moment's notice, you got to get up and do. So, my CEO of the airport was in this meeting yesterday, and hey, he pays me to do a job. He started speaking, and then he turned and said, well, I'm going to turn it over now to Chris. And what's Chris going to do?
You didn't prepare for it.
You're not prepared for it, but you got to get up there and clearly, as I said, be ready. Be ready to be able to deliver, to speak, all these kinds of things. So that's very important. And finally, those are impromptu situations. The final thing I'm going to share with you is, I call it the disruptor. And the disruptor can be one of your staff who constantly disrupts. This can be a board meeting where, a less than easygoing board member, or this can be a large audience that you're speaking to where there's an individual. We're not all the same. We don't all follow the same courtesies. So be prepared for that, for someone who's going to either challenge you or downright come after you and what you're delivering because they don't like what you're saying or what delivering. That's a fact of life. But remember, the first thing we talked about was professionalism. I also mentioned that, I sometimes, to break the ice, to warm up with you, or my way of being cynical, and you don't even know about it, is my humor. Just throw a little bit in there. Many, many, many years ago, long before, and in particularly a lot of this audience probably doesn't even remember those days, airports, particularly in the United States, did not have branded food and beverage. Okay. There were no Starbucks. There were no McDonald's. There were no, whatever your favorite Subway. None of that existed in airports. All food and beverage contracts were bid out to the highest bidder, and there were 3 or 4 gigantic companies in the United States and in the world that provided food and beverage outlets in airports. But what was that? That was generic food. It didn't have a brand on it. Okay. If I hand you a hamburger, you're going to first and foremost say, where'd it come from? Okay. Whose is it? Wendy's. I don't like Wendy's. I only do Burger King. We have our tastes. And airports very slowly got into that groove when they realized that there was a lot of money to be made by attracting you in to your favorite branded food. So I am speaking, we had just been written up by the media for having undesirable food and beverage outlets in our airport. And that, save your money, folks, nothing Miami serves was, worth paying the money there for. And what about that horrible smell throughout the entire terminal of hot dogs and diced onion? People put onions on their hot dogs. I don't, but people do. And that was not a good story. It was not a good story. And I get invited to speak to a group. It's a lot of business people, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're all going to behave because they're business people. And 3 or 4 times during my presentation, which had nothing to do with food and beverage. I don't do that. I eat, but I don't do that. That's not part of my job description. I was talking about business and the airport. And I had some gentleman in the back of the room who 3, 4 times in my presentation said, but what about those hot dogs? and I ignored it the first time, the second time, maybe the third or fourth time. I just finally, laughed and said to the audience, would someone please get that gentleman a hot dog? They all broke. I didn't lose my cool. I just got sarcastically funny, and he stopped talking because I put him on the spot. I just said, would someone kindly get that gentleman a hot dog? So, again, it's important to, professionalism, your personality, content delivery, all those things are important no matter what the setting is.
So we have one last question for you. Sure. And then I think Annette is going to kill us because that will be our time. Annette's going to do this. So
I'm trying to be polite.
Stefan from Sofia, Bulgaria. He wants to know how to get over stage fright. And do you have any tips on how he can overcome his stage fright?
Yeah, it's interesting because, there's the old adage that the best thing you can do is imagine that your audience is completely naked. And, I tried it and I'm like, that isn't going to work either. I think stage fright is ultimately, and I experienced it. I told you all how I felt about having a news reporter in my face with a camera up to my face, and how intimidating that can be. Stage fright can be just quite simply getting up in front of your boss and speaking, never mind 300-400 people in the audience. To me, and this isn't snobbish in any way or conceited in any way, I feel that when I get up in front of you, no matter how many of you will be before me, I'm going to deliver something that nobody knows better than I do. Okay. I'm not going to get up and give a weather report or my views on politics or, what's the latest trends in fashion. That's not me. I will not speak about those things. But when Chris gets up and speaks to you and the content of Chris's presentation, nobody knows more about that than Chris does. And it gives me the comfort and the confidence to deal with 3 people or 333 people. Mm-hmm. And it also, it's something that, you know, if you speak once in your life or once in a year, you may not overcome this. By virtue of what I do, you know, my profession, my career, it's second nature now to get up before a group and speak. So if there was anything there, any semblance of it, it's long gone. But you know the only piece of advice that I can give to any of you is know what you're talking about, limit to your knowledge and your expertise in this and that, and there should be no fear about addressing a group. You know, and believe that they are there. They are there to listen to you. Otherwise, they'd skip out on that conference or skip out on that meeting, wouldn't they? If they're not interested, if they didn't want to hear it, they didn't want to learn. And if they ask you for a hot dog, just go get them one. You know, so thank you all for your attention today. I appreciate it. It was great speaking with you all.
Thank you so much for coming to speak to our amazing students. And you guys, these are the kinds of events that we'll be hosting throughout your professional X-Culture experience. Hopefully, you guys will give us suggestions as to what other things you'd like to learn about. Annette, I think I'm slotted for one of them. I think we're doing life balance basics. Is that right, Annette?
Yes, that is it.
She hasn't told me when I have to go yet, because she's our—
I'll let you know.
She's our manager. She has to tell us what to do. But and you know, really, if there's something that you guys would like to learn about or experience virtually, let us know, and we will do our very best to get somebody like you know, Mr. Chris Mangos, who again, one of the most amazing people I know, and I'm so grateful to have him as one of my best friends. It's really a pleasure to always talk to him, and you know, we go hang out together and we have a good time. You guys also keep in mind that on the 29th, I believe, Annette, we have an invitation to join the World Economic Forum. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That invitation will be sent out to you. I think Madalena Dulio is handling that. That's going to be virtual. Chris, are you going to the World Economic Forum? It's in Miami this year, in October 29th.
No, I think our CEO attends and the board director attends.
Yeah.
They are there along with probably the mayor and our board. Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, it's a big deal, you guys. It's a really big deal. And we have X-Culture access. So that will be coming out. And again, I think the next presentation is either going to be me or Dr. Terez. We have to wait for Annette to tell us when we have to do it. But other than that, you know, just keep your heads up for all of these kinds of events. Thank you so much for your time. Annette, amazing job in managing everybody. Is there anything that you'd like to remind them?
No, truly. You guys have your emails. You always check your emails most oftenly. You're doing great with your assignments, and you're doing a great job. I'm proud of you. Chris, I am very grateful to you. Thank you very much again.
Thank you for calling on me, Annette. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody have any last questions regarding what they're supposed to be doing right now with X-Culture? While you have me here on the spot to answer any questions. Everybody's good? Okay, you guys having fun so far? So far, so good? Okay, so please make sure that you're looking at your emails, because like I said, we'll be announcing some amazing events, especially do the World Economic Forum, which is going to be, I think, October 29th. Just pay attention to that with Madalena is the one who's going to be registering everybody. She'll need to get you guys' names and everything. Okay.
Yeah,
Chris?
there's a lot to learn. I can testify to that.
Peace and love to everybody. X-Culture.
Okay, do the X-Culture. Guys, let's do the X-Culture. I'll take the photo. Everyone, camera on.
Wait, Chris, do this with us.
There we go.
X-Culture.
Anurag, you too.
Okay, I've taken a photo. Everyone else.
Do it again, Annette.
Okay, 1 second, guys. Okay, got it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.